Hi everyone, we're very excited to present to you our submission for the Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition Hackathon, GreenChain, our company which is a global clean energy exchange and marketplace for renewable energy certificates. So this company is built by the four of us. On the next slide we'll see our team, which is Joseph, Alexandra, John, and I. We've built out the technical framework that will give life to our products. And our vision is currently to take renewable energy, which is a force that can be used to address numerous problems that we face as a human race, ranging from climate change to sustainability and improving the standards of living for the world's population. And we have a specific framework to do so by creating an improved global marketplace for the sale of renewable energy certificates, more commonly called RECs, and use the blockchain to do so, which will help us provide transparency and greater accountability to the active participants of these markets. So a renewable energy certificate is a commodity that's tradable and it's non-tangible, which represents 1 megawatt hour of electricity. Now, these are commonly traded in the United States, in other countries as well, and they are a part of the regulatory efforts to increase the capacity of renewable energy that's generated to gradually phase out fossil fuels. Now, a REC is proof that 1 megawatt hour of electricity was generated, and it's either coming from wind or solar, and it was then fed into the shared system of power lines, more commonly called the grid. Now, you can't really tell where electricity came from because you can't track electrons that are sent into the grid. It's kind of like if you take a bottle of water and you pour it into a lake. There's no way to know where that water went specifically. But RECs offer us a chance to purchase the green aspect of renewable energy. What you do is you purchase directly from the person that generated electricity, and then you can call your electricity green. Now, we'll see that on the next slide, there are two main users or purchasers of RECs. I think it's actually, that's the slide. There are utility companies and there are voluntary purchasers of RECs. Now, utility companies are commonly buying RECs because they are in an RPS market. RPS stands for Renewable Portfolio Standards. These are state-mandated regulations that restrict the utility company to purchase a specific percentage of their electricity from renewable energy providers. Sometimes it's 5%, sometimes it's 20%. It depends on the state and the specific laws. But utility companies make up the largest portion of buyers of renewable energy certificates. And they're traditionally buying, or most typically buying, from wind and solar generators. This way they can avoid fines. And there are currently 29 states that have RPS markets. In contrast to the utility companies, there are also households and companies in the voluntary market who buy their electricity from renewable sources, also using RECs. Some examples would include Google and Amazon. Actually, HP, I believe, is generating 100% of their electricity renewably, and a large part of that is through the purchase of RECs from wind and solar providers. These companies usually want the PR benefits of renewable energy, and this gives them an option to do so. The market is also projected to grow, particularly over the next decade when RPS markets increase their thresholds, their expectations for the utility companies by 100% to 431 terawatts. That number represents 5 to 10% of the United States population's energy demand. So while it is an active market right now, it should be even larger in the future. Beyond the United States, RECs also offer a significant way for people, companies to purchase renewable energy. China is a huge success story for solar electricity, and just this year alone, they are installing as much solar capacity as Germany ever has in their entire history of solar investment. China was also issuing RECs for the first time this year through a trial program. Now, assuming that goes well and they continue to expand their market for RECs, it's clear that there is a large global marketplace beyond what exists in the United States. The Ethereum blockchain will allow us to use the global blockchain as a ledger system to transact between buyers and sellers in opposite countries and expand solar capacity globally. We plan to change how RECs are bought and sold using Ethereum. And in short, GreenChain is a global market for selling, purchasing, and auditing the issuance of RECs, or renewable energy certificates. With RECs, anyone can support green energy by buying clean power, and they can also trust where their money's going. An added bonus is regulators can verify that any transaction using a REC for an RPS requirement, they can easily check that transaction on the public blockchain, within the private consortium that we build on the blockchain, and search the data in order to verify that the transaction was correct. All right, now we're going to turn it over, and Joe is going to give us a technical overview of what we built.
Thank you, Michael. Michael was mentioning our goal is to create a private blockchain consortium. We basically want to do a better job at matching buyers and sellers so that nothing goes unwasted. There's lots of stuff that's not being used properly, and we want to move towards a world where renewable energy is the primary source of energy. So we're going to provide a marketplace with that capacity. How will we do that? We're going to use a blockchain or private blockchain, which is going to be, we'll have a public blockchain to see the transaction, but the marketplace between consumers and producers will be a private consortium, and we'll have an operator who controls access to that. As regulations change, we'll be able to, because we have a private and consortium blockchain, be able to do interventions as possible and adjust ourselves. There'll be some anonymity there. You'll be able to basically buy and sell energy without lots of intrusion. The real benefits from the blockchain certainly are the lower operating costs. There won't be a lot of overhead and things like that, and the transactions will be faster. Blockchain, in a public sense, is very slow. Blockchain transactions, for example, on Bitcoin, take almost 10 minutes to secure. Our blockchain would be a lot quicker than that. It'd be somewhere faster than even 10 seconds of transaction. So again, this consortium will be a private consortium consisting of nodes. They'll be regionally located, and they'll be associated with large energy producers. And this blockchain will provide the functionality that we need to allow large and even small producers and consumers to buy and sell these RECs in a marketplace where they know they're getting a fair, trusted price, and where no energy is going to be wasted. We're going to be able to utilize all of the energy that's out there. So how will we do this? We're going to create an application, and the typical application consists of a UI, and that front end will be a UI that will administer and invoke the functionality to maintain this private blockchain I just spoke of. So what kind of functionality are we talking about? We'll be able to register producers, create smart contracts to maintain their accounts, and producers will have, let's say if they're using solar panels on a building to collect it, there'll be some kind of an Internet of Things device that will be able to track and censor when that energy is produced and when those kilowatt hours are transferred over to a storage location where we can maintain all that renewable energy. At that point, the smart contract that lives out there for the producer will be executed, and a transaction will move some RECs into their account. Likewise, consumers can get on there and know that they want to buy some RECs. It's a good marketplace. They're getting a fair price. They'll be able to go and purchase RECs that are readily available from all of our producers, right? So using that blockchain message, we'll be able to maintain and produce RECs using its Oracle. The Oracle, as I mentioned, is a way to go outside the blockchain, interface with the sensor devices on all the producers' recording stations, and be able to record the fact that that energy was produced and stored in storage. And again, this marketplace would be great. It'll be a fair way for RECs to be sold and transferred between users and consumers. Next slide, please. So, blockchain. What are the advantages to a blockchain? Why do we choose to use this particular technology? Problems today exist around data breaches. Large central organizations where bad actors decide to break in are very commonplace. And sadly, the technology of the day is very susceptible to these kinds of break-ins. Every other day, an Experian break-in will take place. Why is that happening? One, because the technology is got lots of holes in its security, and two, once you get in, Most of the technology uses SQL or things like that to store the data. SQL is very easy to break into. It has metadata, which allows an attacker to know exactly what data is in there. And usually there's only one copy of that SQL database. So even if the attacker could get in there and ransom that particular data, or they can get in there and disrupt or compromise that data, get up there and steal it. Problematic in large organizations, and certainly in the transactions that we want to be able to create. Our blockchain is cryptographically secure, and authentication is required. It would be a small group. It's fast, it's frictionless. The fees will be relatively small. Another beauty of the blockchain: 100% uptime. It's not just one node. Many nodes in our blockchain will have copies of the blockchain. They'll be compensated for that. The miners of that data will be compensated in a way that will make it viable and practical and profitable for them. And also, because there's so many copies of this, it'll be publicly verifiable and guaranteed code transaction execution. The blockchain is a good fit for this. Next slide. What are the disadvantages? Well, think about it. The blockchain has no real disadvantages for this type of application. Blockchains are not typically the speediest of applications. You wouldn't use a blockchain perhaps to sell and buy securities on the stock market. It wouldn't be able to run that quickly, and things would be problematic. But the types of transactions that we plan to use in our marketplace, a 10-second time to get a transaction done is not going to be a problem. So that's not an issue. It's still faster than lots of the things that we're going to see in the slide coming up. With existing systems of the day, not only weak in terms of security, and they may be faster than a blockchain, but there's so many different disparate data stores. Everybody has their own copy of the data. Everybody has data stored in a different way, and it's very hard to share and maintain and create trust around data. So lots of problems and things that cause that to be problematic, and that's pretty much what's going on today. So that's problematic, and also the relatively limited transaction rate that blockchain provides. A 10-second rate is not an issue, so i.e. not a disadvantage. Next slide.
So it's not switching. Here we go. All right. So Joe, I'm going to take over from here.
Yes.
What is the? Thank you, Joe. So what is the impact of this? We're gonna measure the impact of using the blockchain by conducting interviews and really getting a much deeper market understanding if we were to continue with this project. But we see that just from a cursory glance that there's a lot of opportunity here. There are end users in the United States using about 3.85 trillion kilowatt hours of electricity in 2016, of which about 16%, not quite 16%, is renewable. There's looking at that renewable capacity. The voluntary market shows an estimated almost 70,000 U.S. consumers purchased 4.25 million RECs in 2015, which is more than half of all voluntary green power sales. Average REC prices were on the low side, only about $1.13 or 34 cents per megawatt hour, but in total, that was about $31.5 million in sales. Looking at the RPS compliance market, there was about $2.6 billion of sales of the in the RPS. Average price was about $12 per megawatt hour per REC, which is about 1.3% of average retail electricity bills. Current targets: the U.S. demand will increase from 215 to 431. That's the 100% increase we talked about earlier. By 2030, or about 5 to 10% of the U.S. population's energy demand. The total demand in the United States is about $2.63 billion annually. The problems that we're solving, if we look at this market, there's a lack of auditable transparency. We're not really sure if the RECs are being double counted, if there's RECs that are sold numerous times. So we would be able to verify what is being produced and how it's being sold and how it's being used. Prices that sometimes, as you saw in the previous slide, there's a big difference between voluntary and RPS market pricing. So by expanding the market and making it consistent across the board, you get more consistency in prices, and as capacity is added, price would stay stable as well, because we would expand the market to cover all regions, as opposed to having very localized markets. And then the fragmented marketplace, where there's a handful of regional tracking systems. These systems don't talk to each other, and it's very difficult to buy RECs across market sectors. So this would be a consistent marketplace across the board, where everybody would have equal access to the market. We have identified some direct competition. The biggest competitor is APX. They're the incumbent in this renewable energy tracking market. They have a product called Tigers, which are transferable instruments for global renewals. It's basically a brand name for RECs. They're ultimately owned by the NICE Euronext, and they're very well funded. They've been in the market since 1996. But they operate numerous regional markets that as I said before, don't talk to each other very well. So you end up seeing different prices in different regions, and it's hard for buyers and sellers to meet each other. Another competitor that we came across is SolarCoin, where they've got a air miles for solar electricity generation model, where they're given SLR coins for every megawatt hour generated. We think that this model is interesting, but it doesn't really, it doesn't have the broad-based appeal of our rec market in general. We have they also have a variety of price fluctuations as well. So in adjacent markets, we found Grid Plus, which is a consensus company, and they're addressing the transmission problems with the energy grid, but not focused specifically on renewable energy. And the Sun Exchange is a company that's building microgrids in remote areas where they are focused on solar energy capacity, but they're not really in the rec market, because they're not feeding it into the overall grid. So not exactly the same market that we're in. How will we make money? We're primarily a nonprofit structure, but we will charge sign-up and transaction fees and consortium member fees to our users, and basically cover costs. We're not looking to make a lot of money here, but basically to provide a valuable service to our users. As far as moving forward, our asks for proof of concepts, the next things that we believe that we need to look into is proprietary metering devices or access to generator metering APIs. So basically understanding what is the technology that's out there right now, how can we get it to talk to our blockchain. Another aspect is validating that the RPS market and our approach will be amenable to state regulations. So we have to research the state regulations to make sure that the blockchain will be an acceptable solution, and we could participate in the RPS markets. And we also need to conduct market surveys and product testing to validate the concept. On the right, you see a renewable energy smart contract flow, where we have our generators, producers and consumers are entering into agreements. The industrial users and residential users are generating electricity and creating the renewable power, where their device will essentially write to the blockchain, to a cryptocurrency wallet, for the capacity that they generate. A coin will be generated. A coin will be created to keep track of every megawatt hour that's created, and we'll have an oracle that will talk to these devices via the web, and we'll write to the blockchain for tracking and for sales. As these RECs are traded, the blockchain will be used to keep track of who has which blockchain, who has which REC, and how, and what is the ultimate disposition of those RECs. That is it for our presentation. We'd like to thank everybody, and if there are any questions, we'll be happy to address them in the follow-ups. Thanks, everybody.